I am Dr. I.
I'm Dr. J, and we are the Twin Doctors, and this is Second Opinion with the
Twin Doctors.
Doctors, my favorite part, give me the news. What's in the news? Well, basically, if you're thinking of moving on or near a golf course, you may want to forget about it.
I see what you did with that.
I made it funny.
Don't quit your date. No, it wasn't funny. Don't quit your date.
Well, basically, there's a new study that came out that found that people who live on or near golf courses are 3 times more likely to suffer from Parkinson's disease. And it turns out that it's the stuff that makes the green green that is the culprit. We're talking about pesticides.
Pesticides in the air, pesticides on the plants, pesticides in the soil, pesticides in the water, which means pesticides in the air.
So what can you do if you already live on or near a golf course? Well, congratulations, you're probably pretty wealthy, so you want to stay healthy. To stay healthy, filter the air, filter the water. HEPA filters, charcoal filters, reverse osmosis filters. Okay, so that was the news. And now on to our main topic of the day. The RVU trap. Is your doctor paying to rush you out of the door? Now, you're probably thinking, what are RVUs? And we've got 2 amazing guests to get right into that. But first, just some stats. Inflation, guys, it's a real thing. The cost of everything is going up. Over the last 25 years, the cost of stuff up by 84%. But check this out.
The cost to provide healthcare has gone up by 250%, but health insurance premiums 317%. However, doctor salaries have gone up by 81%. The math isn't mathing.
Exactly. Our salaries haven't even kept up with inflation, but the cost of healthcare and health insurance skyrocketing. So somebody's getting rich off of healthcare, and it's not doctors. That makes us very sad. So you guys are probably wondering, what are RVUs? And we've got 2 amazing guests to tell you just that. First, we've got Michael Johnson from Michael Johnson LLC. They are a law firm that helps doctors negotiate their contracts. This guy is officially the RVU guru.
And I thought it's RVU King.
RVU King and the RVU guru. It's on the day, right? And then we've got Zin Chen. He is a board-certified pediatrician out of Washington, D.C. He's also got an MBA in healthcare policy and administration, I think. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So thank you guys for joining the show. So we want to jump right in. Mike, who is getting rich off of healthcare and who is not getting rich off of healthcare?
The folks that are getting rich off of healthcare is everybody that inserts themselves between the relationship with the patient and the doctor. Look, at its core, that is the core of healthcare, right? But there's a lot of folks that are able to stick their self in there and make additional profits. And I know a lot of people are very frustrated about the cost of healthcare, the cost of their premiums, the cost of their co-pays, and the person that they see is the doctor, right? But that is not the person that's benefiting.
Yeah, I think we get the brunt of the frustration, exactly. Like, you're rich, and exactly, not the case. All right, Zen, so let me ask you this, and you may be a little bit biased, and that's okay, but do you think that doctors should be making more money? And do you think that patients should know how doctors are being paid and how much?
I think that when it comes to who's making the money, the fact that it's not the doctors and that it's all these other people, like to Mike's point, that are inserting themselves into the system, we're not getting our fair share. So in terms of should we deserve or need to earn more money, I don't know if I can answer that question specifically, but should we be getting our fair cut because we're not getting our fair cut? I think absolutely yes, 100%. In terms of whether or not patients should know or have that transparency to how we are paid, my leaning and my philosophy would be, yeah, transparency is key, and we should be increasing that level of transparency for everybody. So if someone were to ask, hey, how are you paid, or want to get some kind of printout, whatever it is, I think we should be providing that transparency.
Yeah, no, all right. I agree. I mean, I think at the end of the day, how doctors are compensated does play a role both directly and indirectly in patient care and how we provide that care. And I agree, the more transparency, the better. So, okay, we teased this by talking about RVUs, right? And we asked the question, are RVUs not necessarily forcing, but encouraging your doctor to rush you out of the door? So people are probably wondering, what are RVUs?
They are the devil. That is what they are. Moving on. Next question.
RVUs are the devil. I say they're the spawn of Satan, but we can agree to disagree. What are RVUs?
So basically, physicians are paid under a point system. So everything that physicians do, whether it's your clinic visit, whether it's your surgery, whether it's your follow-up care, it's assigned points, work RVU points. And then insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid, anybody that's paying for it will pay the physician based on the number of points that they accumulate, okay? So it's really not a system that rewards time spent in the office, not too much, It's not about quality of care, frankly. It's more about quantity. And that can be very frustrating on the physician side. Look, the vast majority of physicians really just want to provide great care to their patients. They want to make a reasonable amount of compensation. They don't really want to be in this point system, but that's what we have. But, for physicians, think of it more as like a commission-based comp model. So a physician that is seeing a lot more patients, creating a lot more points, is going to typically make more really across the practice settings, whether they're in an independent private practice or working for a large hospital system or even in an academic center. The physicians that do more volume typically make more, and that is an incentive that could come into play.
Because I was gonna say, because more volume is not necessarily linked to better quality. That's the thing. And Jen, so let me ask you this. Do you think that the RVU model has caused physicians to shift from quality of care to quantity of care? Because I know what I think, but I'd love to hear your idea on this one.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, it's a point system. Like Mike just said, it's only valuing based on the volume that you're seeing, so the number of patients, and that has implications on shortening your wait times to try to fit more patients during your clinic day, to try to fit more procedures during your day of in the OR, and that inherently is going to mean less time with each patient. So none of the RVU point system has anything to do with outcomes. Right, so you look at RVUs of primary care services versus that of specialty procedural services, and there's a huge gap with the procedures being heavily outweighed and favored. So does that mean that me counseling you on your diabetes medication and having that verbal 20, 30, 40-minute conversation is lower in value than that foot amputation you needed because nobody counseled you on it? I don't think so.
That would be my point. I was going to say, I think that we are basically compensating people to be sick as opposed to compensating doctors to keep us well.
Yeah.
Right.
But
yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think people would be shocked to know that doctors basically still get a report card. And that report card is based on, like you said, points. And the points are based on how much we do, oftentimes procedurally, but not, like you said, when it comes to counseling. And counseling is an ounce of prevention, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But the pound of cure has more RVs associated with it, and that's more money for, the healthcare system.
I'm actually going to t-shirt that says that. A pound of cure is more RVUs.
Tie, we're all going to sucker off of that, right? But so my next question for you is this then. Do you think that given that it's all about points and accumulating points, that you see an overutilization of certain services? I guess my question is this: are some doctors incentivized to do more procedures? And is there potentially a risk that in being incentivized to do more procedures, they may not necessarily do things that aren't indicated, but that there might be other options that aren't as points rich, if you will?
Sure. Because it drives volume and not necessarily quality, I mentioned that, that could shorten visit times. And I'll give a concrete example. We talk about antibiotic stewardship. We talk about whether or not something actually needs antibiotics to treat. For a typical cold, a viral issue, antibiotics aren't going to do anything. But if your visit time is so short and you don't have enough time to take that accurate history and physical for your patient, you may be thinking it might just be worth it to just play it safe and prescribe that antibiotic. Same thing with like headaches and a neurology appointment. If I'm going for a headache and you have a very short visit time and you don't have enough time to get a full H&P on my issue, you may be more inclined to just get that higher RVU MRI, which is more lucrative for you. It also is a test that will satisfy me as the patient maybe, and you get it done in a shorter time. So I do think a lot of these things just nudge you towards that overutilization.
And another piece of the puzzle, very interestingly, that comes with these patient or doctor report cards, patient satisfaction. Patients sometimes want those antibiotics or they want that MRI, and so that also kind of pushes you to do this because the patients are happy and your boss is happy.
But all of that's very true. But the one thing that also kind of scares me sometimes, we've had colleagues who have just told us, hey, I do things sometimes that aren't necessarily indicated.
Oh, it's straight out, not necessarily, we're not indicated.
Way out.
We're not indicated.
I was trying to be diplomatic, but weren't indicated. And one particular colleague said to me, I do it for two reasons. He said, number one, lots of RVUs associated with it. He didn't say RVUs, but basically lots of money associated with it. And number two, he said that the patient feels like they've had something done. So they're happy and I'm happy. But I wonder if there weren't this focus on RVUs and points and productivity, if that would be this person's approach. And my guess is no. And I wonder if there's some element of patient danger associated with that.
Yeah. So what do you think, Mike? Do you think that RVUs are pushing physicians to overutilize tests and procedures?
So I think at its core, the vast majority of physicians, there are some outliers, are just there to help you, and they're going to do right by the patient, regardless of how many RVUs, even if it costs them money. But to your point about, how folks are paid, if the patient really wants this MRI or this additional thing done, and then the physician also benefits financially from it, then that is also going to drive up healthcare costs maybe unnecessarily. That's maybe part of the reason why we see, this line going up very aggressively for the cost of insurance, and the cost of healthcare going up very aggressively as well, without the same for physicians, because we have a disconnect between, what the patient wants and then how much it costs. This is very apparent in Medicare and Medicaid, but it's a challenge when there's that disconnect.
And I think another part of that conversation too, and it's probably another conversation for another time, but it's the malpractice concern as well. So if you're a doctor, you're thinking, okay, I get this test, probably it's not indicated, but by getting the test, I can prove that my diagnosis was right. I'm protected from a malpractice standpoint. I've generated RVUs that will make my boss happy and put more money in my pocket. And the patient says, wow, Dr. J is amazing. He went all out and he ruled everything out. Great, guy's amazing, and gives me 5 stars on Yelp. I don't know if there's stars, honey. Give me 5 stars on Yelp, And so it's kind of this toxic combination that isn't necessarily ideal for patient care. But everybody kind of feels incentivized by different things that come together and meet in the middle and lead to this kind of toxic mix of sorts. But I don't know. I'm just rambling. It's just a thought. But so what I want to know is this, Mike. What percentage of physicians, roughly, would you say are incentivized by RVUs, either completely or at least in part?
You mean incentivized? You mean like in their contracts? They're compensated.
Compensated. I'm sorry. I meant to say compensated. Like, what percentage of docs are compensated using these points?
Yeah, I'd say the vast majority of physician compensation models, these get very complicated, by the way, but the vast majority bring in volume one way or another. Either they're a flat salary and their future raises depends on the number of work RVUs they did in the past.
So basically you're saying even if I'm a doctor on a flat salary, technically not incentivized by RVUs.
I'm still incentivized by RVUs.
So the hospital system is still tracking my RVUs, and when I come back for my next contract, they're going to say, hey.
They're going to slap your head like,
no, it's counting the beans, like at all times, right? So I think it plays into, okay, who gets more resources, who maybe gets more staff,
Wow.
It plays into a lot. So look, the money talks here in the vast majority of the time that is the case. There might be some unique situations in academia, like a very academic institution, maybe a highly researched institution where work RVUs are not as big of a deal, but that's majority, yes.
Kind of the exception.
As a doctor, I'm kind of surprised. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm kind of surprised to find out that that's going on behind.
Really? That surprises you.
I don't know.
I'm shocked that you're surprised. You think that they're not watching how productive you are? Oh, please.
I guess. I didn't think about it like that.
Okay, well, all right. So moving on. So let me ask you a question, Jen. So obviously it's a huge mission. So as a doctor, we spend a lot of time on non-billable activities. We're going through our buckets. We're sending prescriptions, checking labs, all types of things that we cannot bill for and are not compensated for. So do you think that RVUs are discouraging physicians from doing these still very necessary activities because it's basically a freebie? You're not getting paid for it.
Yeah. I mean, as a doctor, you out of the mission of you being a doctor is you're there to take care of the patient. And I don't know any doctor in my personal life or I've encountered that hasn't tried to do right by their patient as much as to their fullest extent. However, when you have RVUs incentivizing volume, you're seeing so many patients during the day, that ends up pushing all of those patient phone calls, inbox messages, finishing your documentation because you need to accurately send it to the billers and coders, and you have these 24 to 72 hour time limits that you need to make sure all your documentation is done by stipulated by your employer. That increases all of that like pajama time, right? So you're doing all of this work in your PJs at home when you wish you were just spending time having dinner and playing with your kids, watching TV with your family. And so yes, a lot of this non-billable work ends up getting pushed till later, and that contributes to physician burnout, and that's a whole nother can of worms that we can get in.
We're getting there, buddy. We are getting there for sure. So, I mean, Mike, can you think of some legal or ethical concerns that might arise from this whole push towards productivity and RVUs? And then I'm also, well, never mind. I'm about to pile on. Answer that question.
So there are like federal laws and some state laws that are in place regarding fraud, waste, and abuse in physician services. Okay, it's pretty rare. Okay, and they're really catching the outliers here. But if physicians are wildly overbilling for their services, or wildly ordering tests that have really no bearing on what's going on just to drive up a bunch of work RVUs, there are some federal protections in place. Folks will get in trouble. They're criminal statutes. So if you overbill too much, the feds can't come knocking. So
I wonder, because I did hear a colleague like that. Actually, well, never mind. I was going to say the colleague I was telling you about who said, he was doing things that didn't need to be done, where they came knocking at his door. And you may not know, and if you don't, I'm sorry, but what triggers them to knock at your door? Like, what's the criteria they use to determine if it meets the criteria of fraud, waste, and abuse?
I think a lot of guys are looking for outliers. So, like, for example, let's say you're a psychiatrist. I'm married to one. So, average number of work RVUs might be 5,000 to 6,000. Maybe 4,000 to 8,000 is the majority.
Right.
If you're doing 20,000, then that's often going to create a bit of a flag. And remember, like, a lot of healthcare is paid for by the federal government, for Medicare, Medicaid. So it makes sense that the federal government has a duty, really, to their taxpayers to make sure that those funds are not being wasted. And look, if you go too far, there can be issues.
Right. And I want to say, I don't want people to get the impression that physicians, by and large, are abusing the system, because that is not the case. Despite it being a very flawed system, I think most physicians are playing by the rules, just to kind of put that out there.
Yeah. I'll tell you also, in my experience, so I work with a lot of first contract physicians, folks just coming out of training, and I have to teach them about this reality. And they're very frustrated with it. They don't want this. Like, I don't think any physicians really want this system that we have. And it's been set up really outside of the physician's say control input, which is one of the big problems. We have a big disconnect in, how healthcare is actually delivered versus how physicians believe it should be delivered. The best. So maybe one of the reasons why you have the most expensive healthcare in the world, and
A lot of middlemen.
A lot of middlemen.
250 to 315.
Exactly. Well, let me ask you this, Jen, because I feel like, as a physician, the patients who need care the most, people with chronic illnesses, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, are the ones who may be the least well served by the RV model. Do you agree with that, or am I off?
Yeah, I agree with that, because those are the patients that require the most care coordination, and also the most time spent literally just having a conversation. It's not about doing another procedure. There may not be another diagnostic workup to go through. It's just patient counseling and coordinating all their specialty care and everything, other needs that they have, right? Making sure that their home is well equipped, making sure that there's home health or outpatient services, making sure they have all their follow-up scheduled. That's, going back to an early question, a lot of non-billable work, right? And even there are some codes that have now existed over the last decade to compensate a little bit for that. There's CPT codes that compensate for this kind of care coordination, but that value of that RVU is so low that it may not even be worth it to go through the overhead and the expenses to get the documentation done for it. So a lot of people don't even code for it, and a lot of insurance companies don't even pay for those CPT codes, because that's a individual negotiation with every payer.
Yeah. So I guess my question for you then would be, do you think that we're starting to see some pushback amongst physicians? I feel like, my brother and I, we've been in practice for almost 25 years now. I know we have. No, I know. So we've been in practice for like 25 years now, and I feel like when we came in, I don't know the stats, but I would say maybe half of people were in private practice, half of people were employed. Now a majority of people are employed. And I feel like, personally, I don't see many physicians. I mean, I hear them complaining about this,
But I don't see the push.
but I don't see the pushback. What do you think, though? Maybe I'm just in my little bubble here.
I think there's a few elements to this. One, I do sort of sense that there is not enough pushback because we don't learn this stuff. When we're going through our medical education, med school and residency and fellowship, blah, 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 we're not learning about healthcare on the broader scale. And I think there needs to be a better education for us as doctors to understand healthcare at the broader scale. It's all the stuff that I learned during my health management and policy business courses. That's one, I think, side of it all. The other piece, I do think there is some pushback coming from a lot of the family medicine doctors, actually. So, anecdotally, last year I went to one of the large family medicine conferences, and the conference room for the session on direct primary care and direct care services, where it's more of like a direct contracting, almost like a Netflix sort of subscription model with your patients in an affordable manner. That movement has been taking off and slowly building more and more momentum, which is really cool to see, because these doctors are tired of the fee-for-service system. They don't believe that they're incentivized for providing good patient outcomes, and patients are sick of it too. So now you're starting to see some of that pendulum swinging back and that DPC movement growing.
Okay, I want to ask you a question. You mentioned that we're not educated when it comes kind of to the business side and even the insurance side of medicine, and I agree 1,000%. I'm gonna put on my conspiracy hat here. But do you think that's done? No, the conspiracy hat's coming out. No, but do you think that that's done on purpose? Are they willfully keeping us ignorant of the system? Do you think?
If I have to be honest, I don't know. I don't know if I have that same tinfoil hat on, but I will say that right next to you, when I was going through the process, it's difficult because you only have 4 years and you need to go through rotations. You need to get your preclinical knowledge in and all this stuff. And if you keep adding more educational material into it, what is getting replaced, right? Like, you always have to kind of think about that plus minus. So maybe is my answer, but maybe not. And maybe it's just a matter of just like traditional mindset or traditional mentality of what medical school is supposed to be or residency is supposed to be. But I think as we're progressing towards, time always goes forward. As we're progressing forward, healthcare, medicine is directly impacted by all of these background healthcare entities, that it is no longer acceptable for us not to learn about it.
If they're taking,
I'll add to that. So in the firm, we do a lot of residency and fellowship presentations. We'll come in and we'll zoom in for a program, and we'll do, a couple hundred of these. And often for residents and fellows, that 1 hour didactics is all they get on physician contracts. 7, 8 years, 10 years sometimes in training, and they get 1 hour, which seems just wildly off, right?
Yeah. And they're probably post-call and they have to speak during the didactic.
Well, if they're looking for something to replace, they can replace histology. That's just my 2 cents. But anyway, let me ask you this, Mike. Okay, so fine. If I'm a physician in an RVU contract and I'm just upset, I feel like I'm not able to take care of myself, take care of my patients, are there any legal remedies, any legal protections, or am I just kicking rocks?
I mean, the challenge right now, so like we talked about a moment ago, it used to be 80% of folks were in private practice. They controlled their own practice. They controlled their own contracts, what insurances they take, okay? And then 20% were directly employed by academic centers and hospitals. Now it is flipped the opposite way. So 80% are employed and 20% are independent. And if we want to, as physicians, it shouldn't include myself, but I feel like
You're one of us. You're one of us.
Physician adjacent.
We're too far. But if we want to pull that back in the right direction, I think steps like direct primary care. So if you're a primary care doc, contracting directly with your patients, cutting out insurance, cutting out everybody else, just working directly with them, often for a very attractive comp model for the physician and also cheaper overall for the patient and better care. There are movements like that are coming in. It's negotiating with large hospital systems on autonomy and control is very difficult because, look, at its core, hospitals have to pay the physician and then they have to make enough money to pay the physician and their massive administrative staff, okay? We can talk about that for a little while.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But the underlying economics don't lie. Like, they have to make enough money to keep this train going. So, there's pressure to keep the work RVU model continuing.
Yeah. And I think that, and it's a whole nother conversation, like you said, for another time, but I think as we're seeing healthcare systems merge, they're becoming these big behemoths that you really they don't have to negotiate with you. They'd say it's kind of like get on board or get out of the way, Definitely a conversation for another time, though. But, okay, I got a question for you, Zen, and you kind of alluded to it earlier. Physician burnout. Do you feel like this RVU productivity point system model is playing a role in physician burnout?
Yeah, absolutely. You're incentivized to constantly see more, do more, and because you're benchmarked, to certain, let's call it like you want to be at the 65th percentile, 75th percentile, whatever it is, every year it's like that needle moves a little bit more forward. So you got to do a little bit more. Over the last decade, we've seen a lot of visits shrink from an average of 20 minutes to down to 12 minutes. And I would argue that 15 years ago, the 20 minutes wasn't even enough.
No.
So, that idea, like, of course it contributes to burnout. And then not only are you expected to do more in volume, going back into the pajama time and having to do more after your clinical hours, it's adding on to that side of it too, right? So all of it combined together, of course, I do think it's contributing to physician burnout.
And I will say, honestly, when we were employed, when we would get our report cards, not only do you get your report card, but you get to see where you stack up with other physicians. And so that also contributes to the burnout. It's like, oh my God, I'm in the bottom 25th percentile. I've got to see more. I've got to do more. And so you're freaking out, So yeah, I think it definitely adds to physician burnout personally. But okay, fine. So what other options are there? Are there other options? Or as we see more and more employed docs, are we just SOL, or are there other options, and what are they?
Yeah, so the cash pay model, I think, is very viable, especially in primary care, psych, even sometimes OBGYN. Like in OBGYN, like a large portion of folks that are, utilizing women's health are Medicare, Medicaid patients. So the payer mix is not super attractive, frankly, for private practice, and that's why it's becoming more difficult. I'd say that on an advocacy side, trying to increase physician pay under Medicare and Medicaid is a big one, okay?
And that's kind of the benchmark, right? Most private insurers base what they pay you off of Medicare and Medicaid. Is then they pay more, but they use that as the baseline.
Correct. For example, and it's going down, which is crazy. So we see physician comp not rising as much as inflation, but on top of that, okay, 2019, the Medicare Medicaid paid $36 and change per work RVU, and today it is below 32. So 36 to 32 in a 6-year period where inflation was like 25-30% depending on what you ask. So it's like that's like a 40% change in a 6-year span. Like you can't continue that, right? And I'd also add into like when we look at how much physicians are making compared to inflation, the amount of patients that they see has probably inflated far more than that. So the amount that they're making per unit of work and what they're doing is going down even faster than their comp.
And I think that's a part of the burnout. Burnout is physical, burnout is psychological. And when you literally look and see, I'm
working
patients,
harder, I'm making less money, I can't pay my bills.
you psychologically,
Why am I doing this?
So a couple options. So you can go independent and you can try to push back on this. I think that there is a move towards physician unions.
Amen, brother, amen. I trained at Cook County Hospital where we had unions, loved it, but please go ahead.
Okay, this is a big thing that like very, very much freaks out hospitals, right? Oh, I'm sure. So I think that if we saw an increase in number of unions, I think it would start in primary care, pediatrics, OBGYN, psych, and kind of build up from there. That could give physicians more of a say, a bigger seat at the table, a table that they don't have a seat at right now. Right now, it's really the payors and the hospitals that are doing the negotiations, and the physicians are kind of the afterthought. So, I could see that becoming a movement. A lot of residents and fellows are actually unionizing right now, right? So we have this whole group coming up, and I think the next crop of Gen Z folks, I think they're a little bit more aggressive in advocacy and fairness, and I could see that being a positive impact here. I could see an effort to try to split up some of these mega groups. Okay, make them be a little bit more competitive.
I think from an antitrust standpoint, I've seen them split airlines before. If you guys are going to merge, you have to divest yourself of routes and this, that, and the other, and so why not?
So some folks at the FTC have looked at this, the Federal Trade Commission. So, there's been some efforts like there's a big anesthesiology private equity-owned practice that they have worked on There's been some challenges to break up some of the mega groups, but they have a very strong lobby. So I think that the next step would probably be, physicians creating like an advocacy that could match the hospital systems and try to push back. So it makes it very frustrating though, because we're talking about all these like big level issues.
Yeah.
It makes it very frustrating on.
And you just want to be a doctor at the end of the day. You just want to be a doctor. So
We don't have a lobby.
yeah, we don't. Well, no, okay, we don't. But okay, Zen, I was going to ask you. So really, two questions. Firstly, do you think that doctors would be receptive to unionizing? I feel like, again, when we first came in, medicine was viewed as kind of very hoity-toity.
It's a calling. It's a call. You do it for the love of the patient, which we always do. But so unionizing seemed like something you're doing to fight for yourself, which you shouldn't be doing. That's how it was initially. But I'm curious to see what he thinks now about doctors unionizing, because it may have changed.
I think that I am very supportive of all the residents and the current physicians that have been pro-union, because I feel like we have been pushed to the brink, right? That whole idea of a doctor having the autonomy to be able to provide the services the way they want to provide and what they want to provide doesn't seem to exist as much anymore. And we are sort of these cogs in the wheel, providing a frontline service. And unless we have some kind of collective bargaining power, our individual say is nothing compared to the employers that we're facing up against.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I wanted to ask you, as an aside, Grapevine. What is Grapevine?
Oh, yeah, sure. So Grapevine, it's spelled with a Y. So this is my community that I'm building for physicians. I'm looking to tackle physician burnout and empower physician autonomy through connecting people more, connecting doctors and doctors more outside of their usual silos of like their alumni groups and their specialties, their locations. And the reason why is I feel like human connection and that shared ability to collect knowledge, to get mentors is very, very important. And if we're able to do that a little bit more, a little bit better, maybe I can make a dent on this whole physician burnout issue to combat everything else going on. So I've been growing this community slowly, but very passionately.
Have you seen, because I agree, like I see like residents as they're coming out of residency now and starting their jobs, like there's been this huge shift in work-life balance. For us, like 20 years ago, it was like work, your balance was just slept and you went back to work again, right? I'm finding that residents now are like, I'll take call once a week and don't call me, Are you starting to see this shift in work-life balance on your end as well?
Sure. And I think it's important because we realize that, we're actually human beings and we're not just these gears that can just constantly go, right? I just had a whole session today on Grapevine about, what wellness actually means. And it's spending time with your family. It's the idea that, hey, we are no longer living in a world where everybody is a single, income earner home. It's everybody generally is in dual income homes. We all have work obligations. We all want to be involved with our kids and go to their recitals, go to their soccer games, and not miss out on them the way that maybe our parents did, And so like that is that work-life balance and having a little bit more of, gumption to stand up for yourself. I do see that more.
This plays into physician contract negotiation as well, because a lot of these physician contracts might be structured in a way where the work obligations are ill-defined, where the employer can expand them, really placing no limits on what they can require the physician to do. Sometimes the compensation models are solely under the employer's control, where they can unilaterally change them, okay? And then physician contracts often come with really rough exit strategy issues like non-competes, like rough termination rights. It can be very difficult, sticky for physicians to vote with their feet and say, hey, you don't like this employer, go somewhere else. It's not that easy for physicians because they might have a 20, 30 mile non-compete, might have to uproot their family and pull kids out of school and, leave their communities or churches to be employed somewhere else. And that's a lot. So it can be really difficult.
So I think what we're finding here is that this is a huge topic. We're probably gonna have to discuss this again and again and again.
We definitely do this again. But where can people find you?
Yes.
First of all, Zen, where can people find you?
Yeah, easiest way, I'm on Instagram at Zen_MD, Zen ZHEN_MD. I also have a TikTok, ZenMD without the underscore, and LinkedIn. You can find me there, Zen Chan. Connect with me.
Mike.
Yeah, so at Physician Contracts on Instagram. I promise I have the nerdiest Instagram profile on Instagram. We chirp about physician contracts, but check it out. And we have a law firm, michaeljohnsonlegal.com, where we help physicians every day.
Awesome. All right, well, that's great.
Michael Johnson's page every single day. Everyone's still learning.
Then Michael Johnson for president. Well, that was a great conversation. We're going to be moving on to gross anatomy next.
Okay, this appointment's almost over, but before we finish, we have our gross anatomy session of the week, and it comes from India, where a 36-year-old man who was born with a rather protuberant belly continued to have that belly grow and grow and grow. By the time he reached the age of 36, he was pretty much immobile.
He had a lot of workups done, a lot of imaging, but nothing was conclusive, so they took him for surgery. And this is where things got a little weird.
What doctors found inside the gooey mass brought the entire operating room to a standstill.
And as the fluid came out, I put my hand inside, and to my surprise and horror, I could shake hands with somebody inside. So it was a bit shocking for me what I was dealing with, whether there was a fetus inside.
The rare condition is called fetus in fetus. In this case, Doggett was the live host twin connected to his dead parasite twin. As Doggett grew, so did his twin into a 9-pound aberration of calcified bone, teeth, and nails.
Except for the malformed head. It had almost everything. It had long bones of the lower limbs as well as the upper extremities. It did not have a well-formed head, but it had even genitalia, resembling just like a fetus.
It took 2 hours for Dr. Maeta to drain the fluid from Doggett's abdomen and extract the grossly misshapen fetus, along with 2 pounds of hair.
That's right, this biological male was, for all intents and purposes, pregnant. He was carrying his parasitic twin.
Now, I know something about parasitic twins. I'm going to beat you to the punch. I know something about parasitic twins, but tell his story. Go ahead.
So basically, he had a condition called fetus in fetu, very rare, only 200 cases documented. And what happens is you have twins who are growing in utero. One twin dies due to a mutation. The healthy twin takes it in, basically has the baby inside of itself, is born with it. That baby continues to grow over time, mimicking a pregnancy, and eventually you run into a situation like this, very rare case, and that is our gross anatomy session of the week. So this appointment's almost done, guys, but before you leave, head out to the waiting room, go to the reception area.
Make an appointment for the next episode of Second Opinion with the Twin Doctors. I'm Dr. I.
I'm Dr. J. See you later.